This past weekend, Genesis X went down in San Jose, California, and I covered the legendary top 8 in yesterday's video. But that doesn't mean that all of the excitement was stuck in just the Championship Sunday. Welcome, dear viewers, to the second episode of Genesis Week. And today, I'll be going over every major upset and more from Genesis X. And honestly, the hardest part of this video isn't going to be what to include. It's going to be deciding what to cut. That's how much we're dealing with. I can't waste a lot of time talking about upset factor 1s and 2s. No, we're dealing with upsets so large they scaled in on an upset factor of 7, 8, or even 9. First, I want to give a huge shout out to Shinta Smash for graciously providing me with some of the VODs so that I didn't have to hunt for them myself. If you think I released my Genesis X video quickly, Shinta released a video the same night that the top 8 ended. So yeah, Shinta's channel will be linked in the description below. Go check it out. Also, while I'm giving thanks, I'm going to be referencing an upset thread courtesy of Echo Stats. Link to that Twitter page, and thus the upset threads, is also in the description below. And just one more thing before we begin, if you want to support me monetarily, you can do so by using the links to my Patreon or channel memberships in the description below. With that out of the way, let's get started by taking a look at the biggest upsets and some of the biggest stories of the entire weekend. The first thing on the precipice of your mind is most likely Mr. Genesis himself, MkLeo. After a phenomenal performance at Luminosity Makes Big Moves 2024, many people speculated that MkLeo was shaping up to take Genesis X by storm and obtain yet another Genesis crown for himself. So how did that go? Well, MkLeo lost in round 1 pools. You heard me right, Mr. Genesis and the 9th seed of the tournament, after winning his first 2 sets, lost the third to a NorCal Ken main named Titan, who was ranked number 15 on the most recent NorCal rankings. This upset was the largest of the entire weekend, coming in at upset factor 9. So, I wouldn't call it a great start. By the way, I'm going to be saying upset factor quite a lot, so link to an article describing what that means is in the description below. Go ahead and read it if you'd like to know more about what exactly upset factor means. After losing to Titan, to MkLeo's credit, he proceeded to go on a phenomenal losers run, first getting through round 2 pools, dropping a game to MPG on the way, which all culminated in a 3-1 victory against Justice the Minmin, who had just been upset by Peckham in the Minmin Ditto, in order to make top 64. After this, MkLeo defeated Zenodo 3-0 and Tarek 3-1. But sadly, everyone's dreams of a Frostbite-like losers run to a top 8 finish ended here, as MkLeo lost to Gact 3-1, who was in the midst of an insane run that we'll talk about later. All of this, though, meant that MkLeo was eliminated at 25th as the 9th seed. But we're not done here. Speaking of top seeds who did not meet their projections, we have Miya, the 2nd seed of the entire event. In my pre-Genesis analysis video, I called Miya, along with Sonic's, invincible in terms of being upset early on in bracket. Well, turns out, when it came to Miya, I was dead wrong. Remember when Louis Money defeated Miya in the pre-local for Genesis X? Well, turns out that was actually a precursor of things to come, and the first clue we got to Miya's potential bracket demon, Palutena. Yeah, of all the characters to be Game & Watch's kryptonite, it's the apparently worse than Incineroar ex-Queen of Fundies, Palutena. That's a twist of fate that has so much dramatic irony, like this is some sort of screenplay or something. Either way, enough suspense. Miya lost in a close Game 5 set to Raflo, the French Palutena main, in the first round of top 64, which simultaneously bolstered faith in Palutena and faith in France. Miya, for his part, dropped into losers and defeated Kananabe 3-0 and Mudace in a close Game 5 set, before having to go up against Zachary, who had just lost to Sonics in another close Game 5 set. And allow me to be frank for a second, this set was not close, like at all. Zachary 3-stocked Miya Game 3 with Dark Pit, 3-0ing the 2nd seed and eliminating him at 17th place. Miya's 2 losses were both huge upsets, with the loss against Raflo being an upset factor 8, and the loss against Zachary being an upset factor 7. Raflo, for his part, after defeating Miya in this glorious Game 5 set, would go on to lose to Meister, who had just defeated Mudace, in a 3-0 set. And, I really just don't have anything to say about this, other than the fact that I think we've all been a little bit too hard on Meister. Maybe an apology form is in order here. Get on it, Luminosity. Oh, and by the way, you did hear me correctly. Mudace lost to Meister and Miya as a Peach main to place 25th. That's one of the worst ways to go out I've ever heard in my entire life. And lastly, let's talk about our final player, who suffered a major upset early on and went on a pretty great losers run. I told you all to keep your eyes on Hedo headed into this weekend for a good pre-local performance. But on the first day of the tournament, Hedo lost to a Palutena main named Akko in pools 2-1. An upset factor 5 victory for Akko. Now in losers, Hedo had the prospect of a lengthy losers run. But at least he wouldn't have to fight any top 30 seeds immediately afterward, right? Wrong. That's because Kurama, the 25th seed, had just lost to a French Luigi main named Fandever, in an upset factor 7 loss. This meant that Hedo and Kurama had to fight each other in losers for 97th place. But Hedo would be the one who took that set, eliminating Kurama at 97th and proceeding to go on a solid losers run, before eventually losing to Flo, the French Roy, for 49th place as the 40th seed. And you know what? Given the circumstances, that's probably the best that he could have asked for. Those were the big, massive storylines from outside top 8 at Genesis X. Now we've got 2 more things to do in this video. First thing is we're going to go over the lengthy runs that may not have been as flashy but still deserve lengthy recognition. And then we're going to go over the rest of the upsets. Major upsets that I don't have VODs for, and minor upsets that I do have VODs for. Because if you haven't noticed, this entire tournament was basically just not streamed. Especially the upsets. It was quite annoying, to be honest. Let's go over the lengthy runs first. First things first, I have to mention the Corin duo of Shattuck and Neo. While I did go over them in my top 8 recap, since both of them made top 8, they deserve their own special recognition here. Both Corin players were in the 20 to 30 seeding range, with Neo being the 24th seed and Shattuck being the 20th. Both Corins made top 8 through winners after having arrived there fairly easily. Neo defeated Peckham, who had just upset Justice 3-0 as predicted. But what wasn't predicted was Shattuck, who defeated Yara in a close Game 5 set in a matchup that many Corin mains dislike. And unfortunately, both Corin mains would drop into losers at the same time, with Neo losing a Game 5 set to Shuton, and Shattuck losing a 3-1 set to Tweak. From here, both players immediately had a close call, with Neo defeating Onin in a close Game 5 set, and with Shattuck defeating Jackal in a set that was just as close. Both of these players clawed their way to top 8 by the skin of their teeth. Shattuck, for his part, defeated Gluttony in an insane 3-1 upset victory, before defeating Meister in a Game 5 last hit scenario. Let me tell you, from watching this set live, it was tense. And it was going to be a heartbreaker for someone, no matter who won the set. It's easy to forget sometimes that these players are just real people with real emotions, but that was very obvious after watching the end of Shattuck vs Meister. Neo, for his part, had 2 Game 5s back-to-back, first defeating Zachary, hot off of 3-0ing Miya, before reverse 3-0ing Ken, preventing a second Sonic main from making top 8 and entering top 8 himself in the process. While these losers runs were fairly short, they were grueling and difficult beyond measure. Neo and Shattuck would eventually enter top 8 and face off against one another in losers 8s. But if you want to see that set, you should go watch yesterday's video. The last 3 players with lengthy runs that I want to go over are Akakikusu, Gact, and Jojo Johobo. One of these players is not like the others, so let's go over Jojo first. Jojo Johobo got upset in round 1 pools by Vin S, just like MkLeo did actually. And just like MkLeo, Jojo went on an insane losers run to top 64, winning 5 sets in a row. This included, but was not limited to, wins over Pharaoh and most impressively Crepe Soleil. However, a 3-0 loss to Lima in the first set of top 64 ended Jojo's run at 49th as the 116th seed. Jojo is the 3rd and final player to make a losers run to top 64 after losing in round 1 pools, joined by MkLeo and Hedo respectively. Akakikusu was likely the least flashy run, but perhaps the most impressive. Why? Well, because Akakikusu is a Japanese hero main, and he used the English hero menu for his entire run. He quite literally learned English, or at least the spells in English, in order to compete at Genesis. And what did it earn him? Big upsets. First, Akakikusu got Game 5 wins over German Rob Longo, widely considered to be one of Hero's worst matchups, as well as defeating Colorando 8, who had just upset Beast Mode Paul. Then, after losing to Sonics 3-0, Akakikusu also defeated Kiarash in one more Game 5 set. Next, Akakikusu defeated Dabuz and Raflo, both in 3-0 victories. 2 huge wins, before sadly losing to Riddles 3-1 for a final placement of 13th as the 33rd seed. And all I'm saying is, how insane would it have been if this bilingual broski made top 8? And lastly for this segment, we have Gact. I told you all to keep your eye on Gact in my pre-tourney analysis because of a good pre-local performance. Gact came into the event as the 26th seed, and after getting a good win on Nero's 3-1, Gact would lose to another pre-local breakout, Louis Money, in a 3-1, dropping into losers and first defeating Skinny the Pooh in one more 3-1 to make top 64 from losers' side. After this, Gact would make an insane losers run through top 64, defeating Larry Lur 3-1, Yara in a Game 5 set, MkLeo 3-1, and lastly Ashimo in one last Game 5. Unfortunately though, after this, Gact would lose 3-0 to T, who would eventually make top 8, for a final placement of 13th. Gact's run through losers may not have been the longest, but it was perhaps the most stacked, second only to the historic runs of the Corin mains Shattuck and Neo. And now it's time for us to go over the last minor upsets. Well, actually, some of these were major upsets, but I'm calling this section minor, because for every major upset, there's no VOD. And for every VOD, it's a minor upset. So it's all getting lumped under minor. That being said though, let's go over the big ones first. Moose878, the 915th seed, defeats Zelda main Ray, the 110th seed, 2-1 for an upset factor of 6. A Game & Watch main from Switzerland named Fire, the 506th seed, defeats Smirk, the 90th seed, for an upset factor of 5. St. Louis Inkling main and best Inkling in North America, Colorado 8, the 97th seed, defeats Beast Mode Paul, the 32nd seed, in a Game 5 set for an upset factor 4 win. BMP would later lose to German Rob Longo, in an upset factor 3 loss. Which means that Beast Mode Paul lost to 2 players who were immediately defeated by Akakikusu right afterward. That's a bit of a freaky coincidence. Now it's time for us to move into more minor upsets. Some of these I have VODs for, others I don't. Let's get into it. Frenchman Etoye, the 367th seed, defeats Kansas City native Rocky, the 111th seed, 2-1 in the Pac-Man Ditto, for an upset factor of 3. To be fair, Rocky did have a broken toe. Yes, I'm Johning from my region, what about it? North Dakota player Aaron, the 182nd seed, defeats Frenchman Artsniff, the 75th seed, 2-0 in Me Sword Fighter vs Steve. And I'm gonna be frank, it was not close. It's kind of insane actually. Wilds, the 80th seed, defeats Cosmos, the 49th, 3-0 for an upset factor 1 in Kazuya Aegis. Game & Watch main Sauganza, the 175th seed, defeats Mr. E, the 50th seed, in a Game 5 set for an upset factor 3. Base Mage, the 46th seed, defeats Lima, the 19th, in a Game 5 set in Puff Bayo, which is not a good matchup for Puff. Ice Climbers main and 181st seed D-Tier defeats the 53rd seed Void 3-0 for an upset factor 3. Aaron, who we just mentioned, defeats Kiarash, the 54th seed, in a Game 5 set, presumably still using Me Sword Fighter. Not to be outdone though, Kiarash defeats Skyjay, the 22nd seed, 3-1 for an upset factor 3. Zenodo, the 74th seed, defeats Umeki, the 23rd seed, in a Game 5 set for an upset factor of 4. Kazuya main Skeleton, the 168th seed, defeats Lima in a Game 5 set for an upset factor 6 win. This one's actually more like a major upset to be honest, but you know, no VOD. And lastly, Zomba, the 12th seed, defeats Tweak, the 4th, 3-0 in winners quarterfinals for an upset factor 3 win. Oh yeah, if you were wondering, Zomba's performance in top 8 was basically just massive upset after massive upset. But if you want to go check that out, go watch yesterday's video where I went over the entire top 8 in detail. But as far as today goes, that wraps up every major upset and storyline at Genesis X. If I missed anything, feel free to add your own shoutouts and stories in the comments below. Just, you know, don't yell at me. I'm sensitive. Once again, special thanks to Shinta Smash for the VODs and Echo Stats for the upset thread. And if you want to know what the heck upset factor means, check out the article in the description by PG Stats. Don't forget, this week is Genesis Week, which means that tomorrow we'll be covering another topic from Genesis X. Like I established yesterday, the 3 videos we have left are Melee Singles Top 8, which is tomorrow, Ultimate Doubles, which will be on Thursday, and lastly, Rivals of Ether 2 Singles, which will be on Friday. But for now, that's going to be it for today's video. Before I go, shout out to my patrons Seth Laster, Fosco333, Logan S, Persipalm, Wawa, Mr. Sinister, Happy Feet, Ocean Man, and my 2 patrons Iltis and Diamond Blaze. Additionally, shout out my YouTube members Dicho Jr., Defective, Diarrhea, Fan of, Boston R, Iltis, God SSB, Kirby Fan, Nexus, Loco Soco, and my 2 members Mike G, Wu-Chang Forever, and Storm Draper. Lastly, extra special thanks to my tier 3 patrons Misty Bot, who says, in my opinion, Me Gunner is high tier, and Fat Blizzard, who says Zomba is the best player on the planet. If you want to support me using any of these methods, links are in the description below. Also, I want to give one last sincere thanks to Let Me Fly for their continued support of my channel. Link to their Twitter page is in the description below. Don't miss tomorrow's upload, but until then, I've been Mr. Mice, and thank you all so very much for watching.